and I'm in full dress blues. Like I'm dressed in nines. My metal rack is up to my shoulder. Like I got my wings, everything. He turns around and just throws a punch at me. My lawyer
In the courtroom.
in the courtroom.
Wow. Welcome back to another episode of Daddy Issues. Our guest today is going to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his story.
All right, hey guys, my name is Cole. From Colorado, and 25 years old. Have a 4-year-old daughter. So about me and my story. Joined the military at 19 years old, and then my ex and I we were together since we were 18. When I was in the military, going through training, I was a helicopter gunner. So a lot of that time, right before COVID and everything, then COVID hit, and then life kind of went crazy from there. We had my daughter in August of 2020, and kind of how the whole thing unfolded, wasn't what I would say a fairy tale. We were engaged, we were going to get married. Turns out she was actually married to somebody else while I was in SEER training in Washington. She didn't tell me about that. So when I
No
came home,
way.
yeah, so I came home, I've been gone for about 8 months, then came home, saw her, like everything was fine. And I didn't have social media or anything at the time. So it was pretty easy to keep it away from me. And also, I was out in the field, I was out flying. So it was really easy to hide that. Fast forward to Christmas of 2019, we found out that we were having a kid. So we're like, all right, cool. And right away, I was only 20 years old, and I'm like, all right, gotta get married. Like, I was in the military, so I could provide a good life at the time. And looking back on it, I was in a all things considered, pretty good spot. I was active duty. I had, decent income. I was lower ranking at the time, but I had health care. So, like, all things considered, it was a pretty good space to be at. Fast forward, I'm in New Mexico, learning how to fly on helicopters and, how to be a helicopter gunner. And right from there, that distance kind of made it hard. COVID hit and everything, and there's a lot of back and forth, right? Just a lot of arguing and everything. When I found out that she was married, I was like, cool, I don't know if this is my kid or anything. And she was trying to convince me, like, oh, it's not yours. And I remember talking to my mom about it. She was like, you don't know. Obviously, she was being pretty deceptive and everything, so you don't know. And I grew up, I'm Hispanic, so I grew up in that family where you always do the right thing no matter what. And especially if it could be a kid, like you have to do the right thing. And, I still hold that today. So, we're a lot of back and forth where, it kind of ebbs and flows, right? There's times where, we can get along kind of decent. Then there's times where, where's oil and water? It just does not work at all. And it was just weird, I was starting to learn a lot more about her, and I've known her since, high school. And, a lot of mental health issues starting to come into play, and a lot of those kind of became more apparent, throughout that time. So it made it a little difficult. I remember I came home in July. That was the first time they let us go home just because of COVID and everything, like right when it happened. And I asked to see her, just, see her, because the only pictures of her I ever saw when she was showing was just what her mom would send me. And, she was mad at me about something that I apparently did, so I wasn't able to see her. So basically, the entire pregnancy did not see her at all. I get little updates every once in a
Wow.
while. Like I found out we are having a girl. I was outside working on my truck with my buddy, and she's called me and, came up with some elaborate story of like, oh, I watched the video from the OBGYN, and I actually saw it's a girl, so I'm telling you, later on found out they did a whole gender reveal party with the guy who she was married to.
Isn't it funny when you start looking back and you see, you kind of start putting pieces together? But I have so many questions to ask you right now.
Go for it.
This is wild. But thank you for your service. That's a
Appreciate
chopper
that.
gun is pretty badass. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So she was married to this other man, and she was playing it off like this was his kid, and
Yeah.
he thought so too. He thought it was his kid.
Yeah.
Wow.
He actually reached out to me, like towards the beginning, like probably that February time frame. He's like, yeah, it's not yours. Like I know for a fact and all that. I never even knew who this guy was or nothing. And somehow he was able to find me, reach out to me about it. And there's more history that comes into that later. But yeah, he was trying to play it off as it was his kid, and because they just got married, so they want to
Right.
have a family right away.
I mean, that's just unbelievable that someone can be like that deceiving to be married and then bring a kid into this. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, that's what I guess, like, since you didn't have social media, you really just didn't know what was going on. You fully trusted in what she was saying.
Yeah, and I mean, I was training the whole time, so I didn't really have like any free time I had was dedicated, trying to talk to her, trying to spend time with her, trying to maintain that relationship, even though I was far away.
Yeah.
It was pretty easy to hide from me, especially when I was in the field for 2 weeks. Like I had no phone, nothing, and that's when they decided to get married. Was during that time.
That really is like, that's, it's mind blowing.
Yeah,
Wow.
unfortunately. Yeah. So then fast forward, but when my daughter's born, she's born in August. I didn't know. I found out through a Facebook post actually that my Tia she found, and my ex didn't tell me until 2 weeks after. And I kind of had like a weird feeling like that day when I found out through that Facebook post. It was kind of like a weird day, right? Just something my gut was telling me, there's something going on. I get a text and it's like, oh, she's in the hospital, but she's okay. She hasn't given birth yet or anything. And it was actually on the day my daughter was born. And I was like, all right, it's a little weird.
Wow. Yeah.
So then, I get a call from my tia later, and she's like, yeah, like she had a kid, and there's pictures of her with her ex, like being there for my daughter. Like,
So they're split up as well.
well, now they are, but at the time they were
Okay.
still together. So she was playing both of us,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, he was able to experience, that moment where your daughter's born. I
Yeah.
never have that, and I don't hold that against my daughter. I hold that against her, but like I've learned just to, take the high road. Like it's not worth
Hmm.
it. And that's kind of been a theme of everything going on is, the person who she is, like those are the choices she decided to make, but I'm gonna try to make the right choices for my daughter.
Dude, you are such a good man. Like, for as young as you are, you have your head on your shoulders. Like, she fucked up because she lost a great dude. Just by listening to you talk is like, you can tell you're just a stand up guy.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, she might disagree. It depends on the day, honestly. It just
Right.
depends on the day. But yeah, then I came home, I had my check ride and everything, came home, and my unit that I was supposed to go to, they were really cool with me. They were kind of like aware of my story and everything. So like, hey, like we'll work with you. Luckily in the military, you get paternal leave. It was only a month back then. Now it's like 3 months. But I was supposed to be stationed in Montana, and one of my buddies, actually one of my good friends, he swapped with me to be stationed in Wyoming just so I could be closer.
Oh,
You know,
that's
'cause I was,
awesome.
yeah, so that was like the closest geographically I could be to my daughter at the time, and kind of worked out. Fast forward, I meet them. I meet my daughter and everything. It was great. It was surreal. But also I'm 21 years old. Like I
Hmm.
turned 21 like 2 months ago, and I've never been around like a newborn. You know, and I've been around guns and the desert and everything. Then I'm just holding her, and it was all worth it. That period of 9 months, it was hard. Between COVID, between being gone and not really knowing what's going on. It wasn't easy to say the least, and
Yeah.
on top of that, trying to learn my job because at the time my job had a high washout rate, and this was like the job that I wanted. Like I didn't want to do anything else, so I was trying to focus on that as well, and just trying to live at the same time. And we go and after I meet her after a couple of days, like my family meets her and they're telling me like, hey, like just kind of keep your distance a little bit because I don't know if this is my kid or not, right? And I understand like
Oh, you still have yet to do a DNA test or anything?
no, we did. This was at the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was 4 years ago. So
No,
we
I mean, when you met her back then, when you met your daughter
oh
for the first time.
yeah. No, I didn't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It was kind of 50-50. She was still with that guy, and she'd always come up to me, like come up to where I was staying, because I was staying with my parents at the time. I had just moved back, and I'm trying to find a house in Wyoming and everything. So she'd come up to me, and it's kind of, a couple red flags here and there, but I'm like, I kind of have to learn how to be a dad, so I kind of push it to the side, right? Weird thing is, like, never met her family or anything, and I met her family like 2 years ago when my daughter was two,
Oh,
and one of the
wow.
yeah, and that was all her because her family had no idea who I was. They didn't know
Wow.
that there could be somebody else. She just got married to this guy and all these things, so she wanted to keep that perfect image. So when I came into the picture, kind of threw everybody a curveball, and so we did the DNA test. It was like an at-home one or something, and we didn't think about the time like going through court or anything. It came back as she was my daughter, so I'm like, perfect, cool. Like now I'm gonna go all in, try and be the best father that I can. At that point, I was already living in Wyoming, so I would, every weekend or every day I had off, I would drive from Cheyenne, back to South Denver, and I probably put 80,000 miles a year on my truck. just
Damn.
driving back and forth whenever I can just to be involved. And
And she was allowing you to see your daughter?
yeah,
Yeah. That's good.
at, at the time, she was wanting to try to work things out and get back together.
Yeah.
And, for about 6 months, I was like, I don't know, like I need to learn how to be a father first, right? I need to learn how to take care of a newborn, how to make formula. Like I didn't know how to do any of that. Right. And then at the time I was like, after like about 6 months, I'm like, all right, we can try again. So we did. And she had told me, she divorced the guy and everything. She had given me fake paperwork to fill out to put my name on the birth certificate, like all
Oh
this stuff.
my God.
And it's like my mom's a saint. She runs a charity for adults with special needs here. She's a very good person, very trusting. And the stories that my ex was telling her, she was like, yeah, like, you're this like brave, amazing woman. Like, you went through labor all by yourself and all that. When we found out that was all a lie, it changed that whole dynamic because my mom
Yeah.
was willing to, help us out wherever we could. I was a poor airman, I spent most of my money on rent and then just gas, just driving back and forth, and just a lot of lies that kind of came into play. She had told us she was divorced by then, so, we could be together. So I'm like, all right, cool. We could plan a wedding. And I didn't really notice at the time, I was kind of in denial, because I'm like, I have my family now, right? I have my daughter, I have my fiance, future wife and all that. Like, that's what I got to focus on. So we kind of kept pushing back the wedding a little bit. And then after like another year and a half, it's kind of when everything started to crumble. And there's like little telltale signs. Like she had a car. She got into a car accident. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna buy you a new car. I can't get you like a brand new one, but I got her like a nice SUV, like something that's safe. And we're gonna trade in that car. She's like, oh, it's in my dad's name or whatever. Like, whatever BS excuse under the sun. Turns out the guy who she was married to actually bought it for her. So it was in his name. Turns out too, when I was in Wyoming, she was still living with this guy,
Oh my
in
God.
Colorado. And she was very good at hiding it because I think he's a CO, so he works, night shift and everything, so it kind of worked out. And just playing all these games. Once, I was able to come down a little bit more, like I had more leave days saved up, so I tried to take like a week off every month just to spend with them. It's when I met her family and everything, I really started to see different things coming up. Like picture, they took family pictures and he's with my daughter and my ex and like no idea about it. It's like you're taking pictures with a guy who's trying to claim that this is my daughter's father, but that's not the case. So when I show up, they get to know me and everything. She did not like that. She did not like that her parents actually liked me. I guess the guy who she was with, he was abusive, like just all around not a good guy. And so her family, they loved me. Like I was willing to talk with them, like actually get to know them a little bit. So I'm like, you guys are my daughter's family too. And it's kind of when I started to crumble because she didn't like how close they were getting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Always constant fights, like, oh, you're telling them all this stuff, and it's like they were asking me about this. Like you're hiding so much from them. And once everything kind of just fell apart, I was like, I tried to look and see if I was on my daughter's birth certificate, because that's all public records. I was not. So that's when I found out that
And that
information.
was the fake paperwork she gave you?
Yep.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was getting ready to, I'd been active duty for 5 years at that point. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to transition out, go to the reserves. So that way I could be closer to my daughter and still be able to fly. And I'm in the same town as them, luckily. And at the time, so I could be with them, we'd be one big happy family. Didn't really work out too well. And this was something that took like 2 to 3 years to make happen, just
Yeah.
how paperwork, government, everything. But at that point, when it's time to happen, we were already done. But I'm like, do I stay here? Stay active duty? Like, I love my job. I love flying with the boys, deploying and everything. I loved it. But for me, I was like, do I pick that or do I pick my daughter? So I picked my daughter, obviously, and I don't regret it at all. There's a lot of challenges that came with that, but to me, it was worth it. Come here and then I have to figure out, what do I do? Like, she was so mad at me and things were so volatile. Like, I didn't talk to my daughter for 3 months. We had FaceTime and everything, and she was 2, 3 years old at the time. She doesn't have a phone or anything, so
Right.
made it challenging. Luckily, her mom would come out with her and let me see her. So her mom would try to make the effort for me to still see my daughter. But
So she kind of knew what was going on and was like, this isn't okay.
yeah, no, her mom was actually like on my side. She was very supportive and really helpful because she saw the things that her daughter was doing and just wasn't okay with it. And at that point, I was like, I have to go to court. Like, I have to start this whole process. I don't know nothing about court. I've never even been to court before, not even for like a traffic ticket or anything. So I'm like, I had no idea where to go. And luckily, my mom, my parents divorced when I was 16, and she did everything on her own. So she was like a little familiar with it, but she was like, for something like this, you need to get a lawyer. So I was like,
Hmm.
all right, go get a lawyer. Did my research, and luckily I found one. He's been amazing. He actually did the impossible for me because I didn't have rights to my daughter. I
Right.
wasn't I wasn't legally recognized as my daughter, let alone anything else. So we start this whole process, and I'm getting ready to actually go to the south for flight school for another aircraft that I'm flying on. So I'm doing all this remotely, trying to spend as much time with my daughter as I can. And meanwhile, I'm in, Texas, Georgia, like all these places. And I'm still trying to, do court, be a father, still do my job and everything. So it's challenging. And then the whole court process, the beginning, there's some losses, and more so in the sense of the judge, she didn't know if she could rule on it. She didn't know if she had that authority. If we had to go to like a higher level. I'm not sure the proper phrasing for it, but trying to figure all that out. The biggest win came when, we did a core paternity test, so that way the courts could see, hey, like she actually is my daughter. So it's me and the other guy. Luckily, we didn't do it at the same time, just for safety reasons, because he actually started a fight with me in the courtroom after we were done. So what happened was the judge said, okay, I find the best interest that my name is on my daughter's birth certificate. Obviously, my ex was pissed. She was trying to
Yeah.
say that he needs to say on it, and like I'm just this awful person. I'm just the worst of the worst. Every name out there, she threw it out there. So hearing that, for me, that was liberating. So I'm like, all this stuff was finally, coming to play. And
Yep.
I always had the mindset of I just want to do the right thing, right? I want to be in my daughter's life. I don't want to get greedy. I don't want to have like I'd love to have full custody, especially now. But at the time, I'm like I just want to have rights to my daughter. So I was just trying to take the high road and not slander, like not talk bad because I it doesn't do any good.
Hmm.
Luckily, that paid off because the judge was like, it's obvious, you're trying to prevent this from happening, and luckily, all the time spent with my daughter, all the driving and commuting, it paid off because I had that bond with my daughter. I developed a relationship with her, so it paid off. And just seeing my ex's face, like her eyes, like popped out, like she was like, "There's no, like, what the fuck did you just say?" His head just sunk, and I'm sitting there. I'm trying, like, not to cry, like, trying not to flip everybody off, like this is what should have happened, motherfuckers. Like, fuck you
Yeah.
guys. And then, that she reads that, so all that happens, and then we're getting ready to leave. They walk out first, and I'm in full dress blues. Like I'm dressed to the nines. My metal rack is up to my shoulder. Like I got my wings, everything. He turns around and just throws a punch at me. My lawyer
In the courtroom.
in the courtroom,
Wow.
and my lawyer. I guess he's done this before. He grabbed my hand and he waited a second, let him get one more on me, then he let me go. So, and I'm in full dress blues, and I'm like, I can't do this in dress blues, but
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
like self defense and everything. So I get a couple in on him, and then I just stop and I walk away. Bailiff grabs him. The judge looks at him. He's like, yeah, you're going to jail for that. And
Yeah.
she looks at me, and she's like, you're free to go. Kind of gives me like a little wink. So I'm like, I'm not asking questions. I'm getting the fuck out of there.
Unbelievable.
And what's crazy is like this guy, he was trying to like manipulate my ex and like have her do all these things. And I found this out later on. Like he was trying to play her lawyer in a way. And what's funny is during that time, we had questions for them, and we expected them to have questions for me. They didn't ask me a single question the entire time.
Wow.
So that whole precedence kind of, I don't know, they kind of fucked themselves on that one.
Mm.
So then, I'm in the South now at this point. I'm getting ready to go through flight training again and all that. She's like, and I'm still single at this time. She's like, hey, can I come out and see you? She has this history of she'll date like other guys, right? They're pretty shitty people. But when they break up, she comes back to me crawling every time, crying like, hey, like I need someone, all that stuff. I used to fall for it, now I don't. And it was hard because she definitely had that hold on me just because I'm like, you're my daughter's mom. Like, I want to make sure my daughter's okay. And at the time, I want to make sure she was okay. So she would, try to do all that. So they came out to see me. And, it was nice. I hadn't seen my daughter for a couple of months at that point, just 'cause I've been traveling so much. And it was really nice to see her and just spend time with my kiddo, especially in a new place. There's like this great park that was right across the street from where I was renting. So we spent as much time there as we could. And she's talking, my ex, she's talking about, oh, we should get back together, like all this stuff. And I'm pretty hesitant at this point because I'm like, I've played this game before, like one too many times. I don't want to get burned again. And that night, I'm looking, she's on her phone talking like 20 different guys and everything.
Oh my
And I'm like,
God.
yeah, so you're still the same.
Yeah.
You know, she's like, oh, it's not what you think. And I'm like, I've heard it all at this point. And luckily, it was like the last night that they were there. So I told her, I'm like, you know, I don't want to argue. Like, I'm here to spend time with my daughter. You're only here because you have to be, kind of thing. So, you know, spend rest of the night with my daughter, you know, take me to the airport next day. And then as soon as they leave, it's a constant, like, why don't you want to be back with me? And then it turns into like, oh, everything's my fault and whatnot.
Hmm.
And at this point, you know, I actually met my fiance, you know, in the South, and she's great. She's an absolutely great person, like total opposite of my ex in every way. And it's funny because once my ex found out about that, you know, she just lost her shit. Like
Oh, of
she,
course. Yeah.
you know, and she is that person where like, oh, if you're happy because of someone else, it can't be like that, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're going through all those trials and tribulations and whatnot. Like, we're back to the arguing, but now, at least with that parenting plan, or not the parenting plan, the court order, I'm allowed to talk to my daughter every night. So she can't take that away from me. And that's all I cared about was just trying to talk to my daughter.
Yeah.
And
And are you paying child support at this point now because you are on the
no, I'm
her
not.
name? Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I actually got a funny story about that too. So I actually just got the verdict for that. Yeah, it's been crazy. Even my lawyer, he was like, I don't know if we can pull this off, and somehow we did. So we go into like the in Colorado, they have like a separate hearing for like the child parenting plan. They call it like an APR,
Yep.
and that's where they establish like child support, you know, custody, all that stuff. And you know, we're going in. You know, they're trying to slander me, all this stuff, and it's funny. You could tell like how they look in the you know, it was all on camera, right? Because I'm in the South, and they're like all happy, like, oh yeah, we got this in the bag. And like me and my lawyer, like we're pretty serious. So they start asking me questions, like random stuff, and then they're like, oh, did you know your daughter was allergic to like some type of medicine? And I'm like, oh, I had no idea. Like, oh, well, she is. In their evidence that they submitted, there's a picture of like my daughter's medicine cabinet, and it was the exact medicine that she was allergic to.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And so my lawyer, you know, for the rebuttal, he's like, you know, do you see this? I'm like, what is that? He's like, oh yeah, like that's, you know, children's like Motrin or something. And he's like, didn't they say she was just allergic to that? I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right,
Wow.
she's not. So we literally use their own evidence against
Yeah.
her.
And they
Yeah.
were trying to get you as like a bad dad. You don't know about your daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like I only know everything she told me from what I saw. So
Right.
they kind of had the upper hand with that. I'll give them that. And it's funny because at the time, you know, she was trying to move my daughter out of state. Colorado, thank God, they don't like that. They want to keep, you know, their custody cases here. You know, she was trying to move her to the West Coast and everything, and trying to come up with like all these excuses as to why that should happen. And luckily, my lawyer, you know, he really went to bat for me because he asked me before. He was like, you know, how hard do you want me to go? Like, do you want me to go all the way, or just, you know, like, do you want me to be nice? And I was talking to one of my mentors, and he was telling me, you know, he's in a similar situation as me. He's like, this is your only chance to do it. You might as well go balls to the wall. And I was like, you know what? Like, yeah, you're right. Like, I'd rather go into it knowing I did everything I could
Hmm.
than, you know, in a couple of years, like, not regret it versus if I didn't, then I'd regret it right away.
Because that's what a lot of people don't realize either is once you have your final, it's like that's kind of your final until your kids are 18. So
Yeah.
make sure you do what you want to do.
Yeah. And definitely, you know, all the dads in my position, I mean, go balls to the wall. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. You know, that's kind of how I looked at it. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did that honestly because it paid off. It went from all that stuff to my ex's mom was actually my witness.
Oh, no
And
way.
yeah, and I asked her, and she was like, "Yeah, like I'll do that for you," because you know she knew me. That whole thing in court, that was about my daughter. I had
Yeah.
nothing to do with trying to, you know, expose my ex, trying to be like that. I just wanted my daughter. So it's funny. My ex was testifying like all stuff, like, "Oh, we're moving here. She has all this and this," and then her mom comes up, and they're like, "Yeah, like none of that is true." And her mom was
Oh
at the
my
very end,
God.
and it's funny because mom was at the very end, and there was no way that her mom could hear all that.
Right. Right.
You know, I'm just sitting here and I'm like, I'm literally using your own family against you, your own
Hmm.
evidence against you, because you know, you just have like this ego complex where you think you have this in the bag.
Yeah.
And it's funny because she would try to like force me to signing different stuff. So like, good example is she wanted me to sign a parenting plan that said I get 12 weekends supervised, and then after that, it's up to her discretion.
That's wild.
And I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. She's like, well,
Yeah.
the judge, trying to play the mind games, right? Like, oh, the judge isn't gonna grant that to you, like all this stuff. And I'm like, I'd rather take my chances with the court because what you're doing is, you know, it's just bullshit. So, it's funny, they submitted that and the judge actually scolded her. She was like, "You can't do that. Like, he hasn't done anything that warrants that. Like, that might be your opinion, but that's not what the evidence shows." And a lot of the evidence that I was shown was like, she's trying to alienate me from my daughter. She's trying to do all these different things. And, so they do all that. Hearing ends. I'm with my, girl at the time, my girlfriend, and I'm like, I felt pretty good about it because I was like, everything that they try to submit, like we objected to it. We won almost every objection. It's funny. Her lawyer had a lisp, and it drove me nuts the entire time. And me and my lawyer were just texting back and forth, just talking shit about this. 'Cause, like, this is such a joke. And then so it's funny. I called my daughter that night. We're at like Texas Roadhouse or something, and my ex is pissed because it didn't go her way. She's like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
have fun, celebrate." I'm like, "We don't have a verdict yet." And one thing that I've learned, if you're going against your ex in court, if you can get them to argue with your attorney or the judge in court, that'll actually help you out because she was
Oh yeah,
arguing both, even to the point where my attorney was like, "Ma'am, like I'm the one asking questions, not you," and just shut her down completely. And it's funny because her attorney, she was like trying to get in my head and everything. And, going, being in the military and like specific training, like they teach you how to do certain stuff. And so it was easy for me to like see the games they're trying to play. So I didn't let them crack.
100%.
And it's funny because her attorney actually got pissed at me. She's like, "Why are you answering the questions this way?" And I'm like, "I'm only answering them the way that I know how. Like, I'm sorry. I don't know how else to answer,
They're
how."
trying to trap you, but it's not working, so she's getting frustrated.
Exactly. And I'm laughing. Like I'm trying so hard to not laugh. Like inside I'm laughing, but I'm trying to stay stone faced the whole time. And it got to the point her lawyer actually got in trouble by the judge for badgering me.
Oh wow.
And I'm saying here, I'm like, "You fucked up, that's for sure."
It's just so crazy too because your daughter would be so like not that she's not better off now, but like she would be so much better off not going through this whole process. Like you guys as a family, even if you're not together, all these great guys who want to see their kids, just want some sort of custody with their kids. Like I was in a similar situation with my ex and just bad talking. Like I was the best dad in the world, but as soon as we broke up and I found another woman, I was the worst dad. I beat my kids. I was like an alcohol, everything.
Oh yeah.
Same thing, like under, just saying all these things to the judge, and I'm sitting there like, what are you talking about? Like how do you go from I'm the best dad in the world to I'm the worst?
Yeah,
And
like you're just a piece of shit. It's
right,
hard because
oh,
you have to prove
right,
everyone around you might know you're a good person, but because of that one person, you have to prove, unfortunately, to the court, like, "Hey,
yeah,
I'm not a bad guy." And it sucks because I'm willing to bet there are so many dads who are good people, but all it takes is that one accusation or the one allegation,
hmm,
and then not only are you fighting for your kid, but you're fighting just for your reputation.
right. And it could take years for that judge to realize what's going on or for evidence to be submitted. And it's just the amount of money also that you would save by both of you not having an attorney. You know what I mean? Just like
Oh
doing
yeah,
this for your kid, and good for her mom for like she's doing it for your kid. You know what I mean? She understands what's happening. So
yeah. No, it's been that was honestly like a huge blessing because if I didn't have that, I mean, I still probably would have gotten the outcome that I wanted, but
yeah,
it probably would have been a little harder. And she was like, I want what's best for my granddaughter. Her
yep,
mom, she immigrated to this country, and she was in a similar situation, kind of like my situation, but opposite. Like, the dad was not the best person. So on a personal level, like she understood what I was trying to do. Where
hmm,
she's like, "You just want what's best for your daughter, just a happy life. Grow up and be a kid. That's all I wanted for her." So she was very supportive of that. Even her grandfather as well was very supportive because he'd been through the same thing.
yeah.
It's definitely like this weird cycle, kind of where history repeats itself, but like with their family, it's kind of coming on to me. And it's like weird coincidence, but they're really supportive in the end of the day about it. And my ex hated it. Like,
Oh, I couldn't imagine her mom showing up at court as a witness, and you're sitting there like, what?
well, it's so funny because you have to submit like your evidence and your witness list, like
Oh,
it's
true, yeah,
prior, right? So but I guess she didn't even pay attention. It's funny. She didn't submit any witnesses or nothing. Like she was so confident. She's like,
yeah.
"I don't need no witnesses. I don't need nothing. Like I know what's gonna happen." And she saw her mom's name pop up. I get a text from her in the hearing. She's like, "Why the fuck is my mom here?" Like, you're about to find out.
Yeah.
And it worked out. And afterwards, I get this like scolding text from my ex, and she's like so mad at me, and then she deleted it right away. And like I have a smartwatch, so I was able to read through it. And I
Perfect.
saw her like unsend the message, and I'm like, just so you know, like I saw this. I'm not here because I'm not here to like take my daughter away from her. You know,
Hmm.
I wasn't at that point. And I'm like, I'm not here talking bad about you. Like, I'm not making threats, towards you or anything, which that's what she was doing all the time. And all that actually bit her in the ass. So the following week when the judge read the verdict, I mean, it was like the best thing ever because they go through and they're like, we find you credible, we find this credible, whatever. They found her not credible. And that was like the very beginning. And her face was like, oh, like, okay, it's like you lied in court and like we caught you
Yep.
in a lie. So she was trying to move to the West Coast and they're like, you haven't done anything to prove how that will benefit your daughter. Like, we're denying that. So my daughter was ordered to stay in Colorado with me. So like, if my ex wants to move, she
Right.
can't.
She can move.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But my daughter has to stay here, and I've told
That's
her, I was like,
awesome.
and I told her, I'm like, if you want to move to the West Coast, then go. My daughter, she's gonna stay with me. That's it. Like, you'll see her, in the summer or like whatever. Like, we'll make it work. She's like, no, like, she's so hell bent on that. My daughter will not be successful unless she's with her the whole time.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
And this is coming from someone who, like, yeah, she was a model, so she had that for a while, but she doesn't have an education. She goes and dates more guys than I can count. And, like all these activities that she does outside of it, it's like that's not good for a child to have.
Hmm.
And, and I never called her out on that just because I'm like, I don't want to start an argument, but also like I just got everything I wanted. So
Right.
I'm gonna enjoy that, right? And so I got 50-50. I don't pay any child support. She actually owes me child support.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's funny because we made similar income, but because of TRICARE and everything, like that's where, bit her in the ass. And it was only like $30 a month or something.
Oh,
And
okay. Yeah.
I remember telling the judge, I'm like, you know what, like I don't want this. Like just kind of,
You
extend my
know what's so funny? I hear so many dads will say the same thing.
yeah.
Even if it's $1,000 a month, they'll say, let her do whatever,
Yeah.
and that's fine. Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's like I don't, especially for $30, like it
Right.
kind of came off as like that'd be pretty petty to do that, but
Yeah.
also it's kind of like middle finger up, like
one Hundred
I don't
percent.
need you for this. It's funny because after all that happened, I get a phone call from her, and she was like, "Oh, so do you need my help with her?" And I'm like, "No." She's like, "Well, you need it because you don't know what's going on." And I'm like, "I can figure it out."
Yeah.
She's trying to like make it come off as like I need her just to
Yep.
be able to take care of my daughter, and I'm like, I'll figure it out. I always have growing up. And it's funny, she was so pissed off about that. So they try to file another motion, for her to move again, and then it gets denied with prejudice because they're like, you've done this like four times in a row. Like this isn't gonna happen. And the nice thing for me is that I can stay here in Colorado. I'm here in the reserves. I still have my military career. I took a step back, but honestly, it's worth it. I'm in college now. Like I'm getting ready to fly for the airlines here, and like I can
Oh,
live
good for
my
you.
whole. Yeah, no, it's. I mean, that's been the goal. It's been it's just it takes a lot of time more than anything else, and I'm doing that right now. Actually, I'm in college full time, and I'm in flight school full time, and
For to be a pilot, not for the helicopters, but a regular pilot.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm tempted to go back fly helicopters for the military again, to be honest, like with the guard or something. But I know the good money's flying for the airlines.
Oh, absolutely. And what is the flight stuff now? It's like because they upped it. How many hours do you need? Like 2,000 or 1,400 or something?
1500.
1,500. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's expensive.
Oh
Flight
yeah.
hours are expensive, and luckily, being in school and having my GI Bill, like I'm able to still bring some income in, so I'm not like living like a bum. And it's actually been pretty nice because I just get so much more flexibility now. Because I used
Yeah.
to, be an active duty, worked full time. My ex would watch my daughter, which I mean, it worked because I couldn't afford childcare, just
Yeah.
because it's so expensive now. And now that I'm not full time anymore, like I hang out the house, take my daughter to and from school, pick her up, like go on play dates with her, like do whatever. So it's definitely the right decision. And my custody schedule is week on, week off, which is pretty nice because the week that I don't have my daughter, I can plan everything out. So I
Yeah.
usually, fly 4 to 5 days a week, still talk to my daughter every night, do school, do whatever. So I try to make it productive. And that's definitely one of the things if you want to be in a career like that, depending on your custody schedule, if you, the time you're not with your kid, like focus on what you're trying to do to improve yourself and then do that 100%. And obviously you take time out of your day to talk to your kids or see them or whatever, right? For me, what I've noticed is I have a lot of buddies in the military. They're all divorced, single fathers. It's the name of the game with the military. And a lot of them, they always say like, I wish I took more time to work on myself when I didn't have my kid, so that way I could
Hmm.
be better for them. And luckily, my mentor, he was the one who really opened my eyes up to that because he's a pilot as well now on the outside. He's like, dude, just focus on this when you don't have her. But then when you do have your daughter, like it's all on her. Everything kind of stops.
And that's great that you got a mentor because if you don't know when you're still pretty young, but it's like you just don't realize like, oh, maybe I should be doing this with my time. It's going to benefit me in the long run.
Right, right. And I see a lot of dads, they're like, "Oh, I want to make more money, but I just don't know how," and like and I felt like this too, which is why I joined the military. I was kind of lost, the path I was going on. Like I dropped out of college, I lost my baseball scholarship and I'm like, this isn't working out. And eventually, I was able to find my way to what works. So definitely whatever you're passionate about, definitely try to find a way to make that work. And if you can make that make you money, that's only going to help you, but also help your kid,
Yeah.
because I can like now, like every summer, like I found my stepdad gave me a boat and like it's old, beat up and everything, needed work done. And, I taught my daughter like how to work on that with me, kind of like a
That's
little summer
awesome.
project. And by the time we were done, we'd spend every weekend we could like on the lake, wakeboarding, tubing, whatever. And she loves it, and I'm proud to say, like she helped me with that. Mind you, she had like a little hammer, like, hammering
Right.
nails, like something small, like what a 4-year-old could do, but,
Yeah.
trying to teach her all that stuff. And she loved it, especially like just being on the water. Like when she,
Hmm.
fortunately, when she's with her mom, she doesn't do a lot of stuff that's like outdoorsy or, like exposing her to something new. It's always like you're watching a movie and that's it, put another movie on. Like my daughter, she'll like if I'm backing up my truck to hook up to the trailer, she wants to be right there with me.
Yep.
I'm
That's my
working on
kids too. It,
like
it it's amazing.
oh yeah, they just want to be right there with dad. They
Yeah.
want to learn all this stuff, and I love it. And I definitely, I mean, she's probably gonna turn into a tomboy. 'Cause, like I build diesel trucks on the side, that's like a hobby. And I mean, she's right there with me, trying to clean something or work on it. Sometimes it doesn't really help out, but like for her, it's the funniest question she loves to ask me. She's like, "Daddy, can I get my hands dirty?" And I'm like, I love that. Like I'm
Yeah.
covered in dirt and all that, and like the fact that she wants to do that too. I'm like, I love that. Like for me,
Yeah, and it's dope too because you're able to spend time with her, still doing guy things,
right?
fixing stuff, but she's like down with it.
Oh
That's
yeah.
awesome.
No, I got her like her own little set of tools, like plastic
Yeah.
tools. She's like, "All right, we gotta do this, we gotta do that." I'm like, like, and she's smart. Like, she's really, really smart for a 4-year-old. And I'm like, I'm proud that she knows how to do this. And it's just funny because she'll try to work on it. She gets so frustrated. She looks at me like, "Oh, can you fix this?" And I'm like, "Here, like, let me show you." And she'll
Yep.
be right there with me trying to learn. And it's
Yeah.
been I love it, and especially being at that point now. It's like when I came back home after flight training, deployments, and everything. Like it was a hard transition, to say the least. And at that point, I only had my daughter for maybe a couple days a week. Like every weekend, maybe a couple days here and there. Then having her, week on, week off, like it was a huge transition.
Yeah.
And that was like one of the things I found worked really well between her and I was just I go work on something, she just wants to be right there with me.
Yeah.
So I love it, and for what it is, she has a pretty good life, and hopefully, by flying for the airlines, trying to get my degree and everything, eventually give her something a little bit bigger, a little bit better as well. Unfortunately, her mom, she's not really focused on that. She doesn't want
Yeah.
to try to get an education or do anything. She just wants to be taken care of and, just stay right there and not do anything.
Yeah, but your daughter will see that and see the work you're putting in and how happy she is when she's with you. I mean, dude, you sound like just such a great guy. You know what I mean? Like I just can't believe that your ex blew it. You know what I mean? Like she could have had a great life and you guys would have been happy, but she just kept fucking around.
That's where more so today or like in today's world than a couple of years ago, mental health. Like she's a legitimate narcissist.
Hmm.
She's one of the 1% that's like that, and also borderline personality disorder. And it's a very challenging combination to work with, let alone one of them. And she came with these ideas of like, oh, I'm talking to other girls, or like when I'm deployed or something, like, oh, you're cheating, doing all this. It's like, no, like when I was deployed, like, I was doing what I needed to do for my country.
Right.
A lot of that stuff's not really the best to talk about. Like I wasn't just, going over there just getting drunk and having fun. Like I was working 14, 18-hour days, not sleeping for 4 days straight 'cause I'm flying so much, trying to do what I had to do, and then the other part too was like, she had so many guys wanting to get with her and she loved the attention,
Hmm.
and I remember there was a period where I was gone for 9 months and she's like, "Oh, you're not giving me any attention." I'm like, "I barely have Wi-Fi to talk to you as it is. Like I'm, I'm literally getting shot at almost every day. Like I can't do that. But like the time
Right.
I would have, like I would try to spend as much time with you as I could until, we either got an alert call, the Wi-Fi went down, or, we were getting attacked. And it's like I had to go. And she knew what she was signing up for with me being
Hmm.
gone, especially the job that I was doing. Like it's not an everyday job. And but she chose to let that be her excuse. To be like,
Right.
you don't love me anymore. It's all that. It's like you guys were the only thing getting me through being in pretty much hell just to come back. Like,
Right. But that's the
it's
thing. They have no idea what it's like to be there. So, it's
yeah,
it's so tough because a lot of men in your position who are serving, overseas and stuff like that is like your wife or your significant other, whoever, girlfriend is at home, for 9 months. And
yeah,
it's like, I understand you get lonely, but it's like, what you signed up for. It's like, how can't you be faithful? You know what I mean? Like, I'm serving the country. Your things are still getting paid. Like, everything's still getting paid. You have insurance. I
yeah.
just, I feel so bad for all these men because they're doing as much as they can. And then they come back home and they find out their wives cheated on them or did whatever.
I mean, they take it all for granted.
Yeah.
Like they
Yeah.
don't realize, like, sure, you get your free housing, you get your free health care, but it's like you don't understand what I'm doing,
Right.
to
To
earn
make
all.
that happen.
Like, there are some people like they're paper pushers, right? But I'm in the back of a helo, like I'm working machine gun, I'm saving people's lives. Like I mean, there were times where I'm like, I'm not gonna make it this time.
Yeah.
And the only thought going through my head was, my family, like right away, like my daughter and at the time my ex. I was like, they were the only two people I thought of when, we are getting shot down. One of the times we got shot down, and I'm like, I might not make this, and that's the only thing that came through my head was
That's
that.
badass as fuck. Oh my God.
It sounds like that in the moment, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's scary as hell, and because I was a guy hanging outside the helicopter holding a machine gun,
Jesus.
and I'm like, yeah, like,
And at like 21, 22.
yeah,
Wow.
like gunners, we don't usually survive. It's funny, there's a statistic back in Vietnam, guys in my job, their average lifespan was 5 minutes. And then we found out when, we were overseas in the sandbox, we're like, oh yeah, you guys, it's a lot better now. It's like a couple months. And I'm like,
Yeah. Oh, great. Thanks.
I'm here for 9 months, so what's a couple,
Yeah.
right? And
Jesus.
I remember like when I caught my ex cheating on me, she was in Dallas for some party or whatever, and she met a guy who was an NFL player, and she started cheating on him with me. I remember I came home, my daughter was there, like my whole her whole family was there, welcoming me home, but she wasn't there, and I was like, all right, something's weird. Everybody knew that too. Everybody knew something.
Wow.
So I go back to my house and just catch him right in the middle of it. And my buddy, he was with me because we're gonna surprise his wife and everything. Like we had this whole thing planned out. We would stop by my house first. So we walk in and catch all that. And mind you, I just came back from being overseas. Like I'm trigger happy. Like I'm pissed
Right.
off. Like
Oh
built up
my
testosterone and
God.
everything. And I see all that. And my buddy, he looks at me. He's like, "Yeah, this shit ain't worth it." And she's like, "Oh, I didn't know you were gonna be home today." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not coming home again."
Wow.
Pick up my daughter, and luckily, like my daughter wasn't there. Like she didn't actually see that. Like she was in the kitchen getting a snack or something. Just pick up my daughter. I call my mom. Like, hey, I'm staying with you guys tonight. Just caught my ex cheating on me, and she's like, yeah, like don't worry. Like we'll figure it out later. Still surprised my buddy's his fiance and everything, but yeah, that was hard. Catching her in that. I'm like, that was my second deployment where I'm like, yeah, I did all stuff, and so it's like, cool. What did you do on my first deployment? What did you do every day when I was gone? What did my daughter
Right.
see?
Then you start thinking like you'll go crazy.
In
Damn.
hindsight, hindsight 2020, it's a good thing. It's also a bitch and a
Yeah.
half. And I did spend a lot of time of like, what did I miss? And there were so many fucking things that I missed because
Yeah.
I was just so focused on, trying to just to be the best father and husband that I could. And, probably stuff that I would give leeway on back then, like I don't do now, looking at red flags and everything.
Hmm.
And, yeah, that was hard, come home, stay at my parents' house. And luckily my parents stay on the middle of the sticks. So I could go there and like go shooting, go do whatever, and spend time with my daughter. I'm like, I need to go shoot. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of my hobby and go take care of all that. Then I see her come up and everything, and I'm like, there's no fucking way she's here right now.
See,
So
that's one thing I didn't have to deal with is the cheating. I don't
yeah,
know if I would mentally be able to handle that. Like, I don't know what I would do, but
it's
it's
hard.
crazy. Yeah.
Well, you let your mind, you kind of let your mind run away.
Yeah.
Like I'm sitting there, like I'm shooting, as I see her car coming up, And right away, I'm like, I can fix this, no problem. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not doing any good, you know. And
Yeah.
part of that was a struggle too. Coming back home was being able to adjust back to normal life again. You
Yeah.
know, I'm not getting shot at anymore. I'm not in 130-degree weather heat. Like I'm back home in Colorado. It's nice and cold. Like I'm in my R&R. Like I have to get normal again, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she shows up and she's like, "Oh, it's not what you think." And I'm like, "I literally saw everything. I actually had a witness, like, trying to get all back together." And she's like, "Oh, well, it's your fault. It's your fault."
Of course. Yeah.
And I'm like, "All right, yeah, I was, overseas for a while. Can't really help that. It's just every excuse like under the sun."
Hmm.
And she's like, "Well, I want my daughter. Like, I want my daughter right now." And I'm like, "You don't get her. Like, you need to leave." So eventually, my mom comes out and she tells her to leave, like, otherwise we're gonna call the sheriffs and everything. And she was like, "Oh, well, you're not going to do that." So we call the sheriffs. Sheriffs comes, and luckily, like, I'm from a small town. Everybody knows everybody,
Yeah.
and they all knew like I had just come back. So a few of the sheriffs were going to come by just see me anyway. They're prior vets anyway. So we call them, let them know what's going on. So they come over. They tell her like, "Hey, like, either leave or you're going to get trespassed." So eventually, she's like, "All right, I'll leave." And they're like, "Yeah, like, we're sorry about that." So we did like a no trespass order, and then actually got a restraining order put against her because
Oh wow.
as soon as she left, I mean, dude, I was getting threat after threat after threat.
I bet. Yeah.
And then at that point, that's when I was getting ready to leave, move down to Colorado. So I was like, all right, I need a lawyer up. And it wasn't easy. And I remember the whole time I was sitting there, I'm like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, what did I
Hmm.
do to you? And I hear her excuses, like, you were gone, like, you were mean, you were drunk. And I'm like, I don't drink. Like, I'm not like a mean person. Like, I'm very just laid back and chill.
Yeah.
And I don't even yell. I don't cuss at her, like, nothing, right? So I'm like, what did I do? And then it all came up to, she just, she thought she could find something different and realized that she couldn't.
Yeah.
And
No, she lost what would have changed her life. You are a great, just by talking to you for 40 minutes, man, you are a very good guy.
I appreciate that.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, I have my flaws, just like everybody else.
Of course, but I mean you're about those, the values that you should be about, working hard and your family. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And like she's not going to find that with the, keep fucking around with those fuck boys.
Oh,
And it's
definitely.
like, she's just going to keep doing the same thing.
Yeah, and it's funny that still like happens to this day. Like 2 months
Right.
ago, I was working on my truck, and she had my daughter calls me crying, like, "Hey, can you pick up my daughter?" And she's like, I can't be around her." And I'm like, "All right, like, just not gonna ask any questions. Like, if I can get more time with my kiddo, then of course I am." And it's funny because she loves to try to like insert her way back into my life somehow.
Hmm.
At this point, like, I'm already engaged, like, and she knows that. And so, excuse me, I pick up my daughter, and I'm in. My girl has a Jeep, so middle of summer, so like the roof's off and everything. My daughter loves it, so I pull up in there because like my truck's half apart right now. And then, my daughter, she sees me, like, gives me a big hug, like, "I'm so happy to see you," and all that. Then my ex comes up and gives me a hug, and I'm right away, like, my hands are up. I'm like, my hands are like, I don't know if anyone's looking, but like my hands are where they're supposed to be. Like, I'm not doing nothing I'm not supposed to. And she starts crying. She's like, "I miss you. Like, I wanna make this work and all this stuff." And I'm like, I'm here to pick up my daughter.
Yeah.
I'm not here, like, we're not like that
Your
anymore,
time's up. Yeah.
you know?
Damn.
And then, she'll come back and try to text me, like, "Oh, like, what are you doing? Like, can we get a drink or whatever?" And I'm like, just the answer is no. Like, unless you have something to talk to me about my daughter, like, I don't want to talk to you. And it took me a while, honestly, to get to that point.
Yeah.
There were times where I'm like, it's not that I missed her, but like I missed the family side of things.
Yeah.
And now, like, honestly, like, my fiance, I credit a lot to her. Like, she was able to really pull me out of that and show me, like, what is a healthy, natural relationship. Because what I thought was natural and healthy at the time was the complete fucking opposite. And that's
Hmm.
a lot of time to figure out. And then, she was able to see, like, yeah, like, your ex is going to try to do this and this. And she was right. Now, like, I'm able to call out everything she does beforehand because my ex is so pissed that I'm with my fiance. Like, she'll reach out to her randomly, just try to start shit, try to get me in trouble and everything.
Yeah.
It's like, can't you just let me be happy? Like, my daughter and my fiance have an amazing relationship together, which I'm very grateful for because
Yeah.
that was my biggest worry. And this is the first, woman that I've ever brought around my daughter too. Because I'm like, if I'm gonna bring anyone around my daughter, like, I'm gonna marry this person. Like, I don't want to set that example like her mom does, where there's, a new guy every month or everything.
Right.
Try
Yep.
to provide that stability. And create like a good role model. And she doesn't like that. It's funny because she's like, oh, she's a bad person, all this stuff. And that's what sucks is, when you pick up your kiddo, you're like, all right, what stuff did mommy talk crap about to you today or
Mm-hmm.
whatever? So I got to fix all that and then change that, where it's like, you know, my fiance, she is a good person. She's a nurse. Like, she's a very caring person. Like, there's not a bad bone in her body. So it's challenging trying to work through all that, especially the day to day. That's where there's a lot of struggle. Like right now, there's a lot of arguing because she doesn't like that I didn't do something for her, and it was like something that was so like just ridiculous and everything. I'm like, I don't need to do this.
Right. Yeah.
Like, they try to force you to things like to get like a CFI involved. I'm like, there's nothing that shows this. And she's like, oh, well, I determined that. I'm like, no, the judge does. So, like, I'm not going to pay for anything. Like, I'm not doing anything unless the judge tells me to. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
give a shit. She doesn't like that, because she lost that whole control before,
Exactly. Yep.
before she can control me, my daughter, everything. And I got some of that back. And,
Yeah.
she hates it.
Oh yeah. And it feels good too to, especially because you kept going back and you loved her so much, or you loved the family aspect of it, and now you can just be like, I'm good. I'm here for my daughter. I'm doing the right things, and it is what it is.
Yeah. And
So
now, like, I'm getting ready to have my own family, like, trying to make that 5-year plan, that 10-year plan, and all that. And,
yeah.
it sucks that it didn't really work out with her, but everything happens for a reason. And now I get to see, the life that I can give my daughter now. It's a lot better than what it was going to be before.
Right.
And for me, that's all I care about. As long as she had a better life than me, and I was a better father than my dad was to me, then that's all. That's the least that I could do. It's not hard. It's not hard to just be a decent person.
Right. Yeah.
Just get along with your co-parent. Like, I get it. Like, I see some people co-parent and it goes really, really well. And I'm like, I wish I could have that. They're like, oh, why not? I'm like, because my ex is still bitter and she doesn't like that she's not with me, that I moved on.
Yeah.
Like, so what's the issue? I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like, trust me.
That's the thing, right? You can be as nice as you want, not talk shit, not do whatever. It's like try to get along, but that other half needs to be on the same page, or else it's just not going to work.
And that's the hardest part. And
Yeah.
I get, like, being jealous. You see your ex with someone else. Like, sure, you get jealous about that. You see someone else with your kid. I've been there before. Like,
Yeah.
one of the guys was taking my daughter sledding. Like, I got jealous about that, but I'm like, I gotta look at the bigger picture here.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the one thing that my mom really instilled with me is take the high road.
Yeah.
Like, my ex likes to do like petty fights and like all this stuff. I just don't even bother engaging. Like, it doesn't
Yep.
do any good, and it's usually not about my daughter anyway. So for me, like, I try to really take that, like, just take the high road, just be polite, even if you want to, cuss, scream, yell, whatever. It's not going to do you any good. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, she hasn't learned that yet. I doubt she ever will. And
Right.
part, dealing with someone who is a narcissist and has borderline personality disorder, you have to document everything because
Yep.
it's a game. And that's what's so tiring. And I know I've seen on that Facebook group that we're all a part of, there's some guys who've mentioned like how do you deal with someone like this. And unfortunately, it's a game you play for next, how until your kid's 18, 19 years old, and then
Right.
sometimes afterwards. And it become, you just become tired after a while. But it gets easier. You get used to it. It gets easier. You kind of know ahead of time, here's the bullshit they're going to try and play.
Yep.
But it's not easy, and that adds a completely different aspect to the entire thing because I know, like, I'm not dealing with someone who's normal anymore. I mean, yeah, most women are crazy, don't get me wrong, but this is someone who, they take it up a couple notches and then some.
Yeah.
So it can be challenging, but at the end of the day, as long as you have your kids, like, I see my daughter every other week, it's worth it for me. I'll deal with all the bullshit that I need to for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
It was incredible.
Me down. You can hold me down. You can't hold me down. You